I have two children. One is 3.5 right now. The other one is a newborn. And I intend to breastfeed all my children. I breastfed Charlie for a year and a half. I would have liked to go till 2 years old, but I weaned to increase my fertility so that I could conceive the next child. At least that was my hope. That was my intent. That's why I weaned a little bit early there. Early in my opinion. And then in T, I hope to breastfeed him at least for a year and a half. I hope to breastfeed all of my children at least for a year and a half, maybe more, because honestly, weaning Charlie at 18 months, it may have had an effect. I'm not really sure because it took a whole full year more or later to conceive from the time that I weaned him. So I can't tell whether weaning him played any part in, helping me to conceive the next child, or whether it was just unrelated, whether it's just God's timing or whatever the case. So that's a decision I'll have to make closer to the time. I am inclined to just go all the way till 2 because who knows if this is not my last child, and who knows if, I know breastfeeding does decrease your fertility to an extent, but people conceive while breastfeeding all the time. So I don't necessarily have to stop on account of that. I can really just trust God and see, and stop trying to be in control and just, enjoy my breastfeeding journey with my child because it's enjoyable and healthy for them. But yeah, I may decide to wean again at a year and a half. I'm open to that, but certainly at the bare minimum, we breastfeed in a year, okay? because you breastfeed full time up to 6 months ish, and then you introduce solid foods. But there's a saying that I seem to like. People say food before one is just for fun. I think I like the heart behind that, behind that quote, just saying that, they're learning to eat. So my expectations, are low, I don't want to have to put pressure on my child to eat food that he's not accustomed to, still getting used to, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to be able to still always provide milk and make sure that he has enough, nutrition while he's learning to eat. Right. So for me, I feel like breastfeeding until 1 is wise and good to do because it gives your child an opportunity to enjoy learning to eat and trying new foods without the pressure of like, this has to satiate me. This has to be enough for me. I have to learn to eat solid foods. Yeah. So yeah, at least a year. The reason breastfeeding is important to me and should be important to every mother is because breast milk is the most nutritionally rich food source for your child, also the safest. And as well, the whole breastfeeding experience, as far as nurturing your child and holding them close to you, doing that, skin to skin, doing that it's a constant checking in with your child, really, as you're feeding them. It creates, secure attachment. It creates attachment to your child. And I just think it's an overall healthy practice. It's God designed, and I think God's design is the best, better than any man-made, design or product, aka like a pump or formula or anything like that. So, it's not to shame anyone. I've used formula and I've used the pump before. So those things exist for a reason. When I was desperate, I resorted to both, but I think that they ought to be seen as tools for an emergency situation as opposed to like a norm or a standard for feeding your child. I think that the idea of breastfeeding is popular to every mother. I think all mothers know that breastfeeding is the best thing that they can do for their infant child. Maybe not every mother, but certainly the majority of mothers. However, I think that our culture and lifestyle, like the Western lifestyle, just does not lend itself to, full-time breastfeeding for a mom, for those first 6 months to a year, et cetera, right? Because you can keep breastfeeding beyond that too. And I think that's also wonderful and great. The fact that women are working full time, you can't breastfeeding is a full-time job. You can't work full-time and breastfeed full-time, like put your child to the breast, because you can't take your child with you to work for those 8 hours you're there. And your supply depends on you being able to feed your child around the clock. Maternity leave is not enough. So number one, because you're gonna have to go back to work, I feel like resiliency is low for many women, because they think to themselves, even if I get this thing right, I'm not even gonna be able to continue because I have to go back to work. But secondly, when the problems arise, which, often happens, then yeah, I think you're thinking from the perspective of there's just no point. Like there's no point in suffering through this, just to have to give it up to go back to work. So when there are problems, like it's not worth going through it, I feel like, for a lot of women. And also, like, pumping is really difficult. It's like its own education and its own experience. And some people have a great supply, but I think honestly, I would have to look up statistics about this. So I don't want to misspeak, but I really suspect that pumping is challenging for most women, like as a, I don't want to say lifestyle, but as a what's the word I'm looking for? Like pumping for like months on end, as opposed to just pumping as needed kind of thing. I think that's a really tough lifestyle, because like when you put your baby to the breast, you take a shower every day, so you're washing your parts every day naturally as you shower. But when you have a pump, you have to you have to wash the parts like manually. That's an additional task to do. And when your supply is not good, that can be like really a challenge. And trying to figure out the settings and all that. I'm kind of rambling, but pumping just can be really tricky, is my point. All that to say, I really respect moms who figure that out, because there are some working moms who figure out how to pump full time for their babies and make enough milk. I do find that, again, this is my experience, is not a statistic. I seem to gather that a lot of pumping moms do end up introducing formula earlier than a full-time breastfeeding mom, because it is hard to keep your supply up. And so they'll start to sort of add formula, and then eventually sort of wean off of pumping and end up doing formula, or you know continuing formula toward the end of the breastfeeding journey. Those are some of the challenges that women face. It's not their fault, but I do think that there's a huge deception that has happened in the culture, and you have to just be willing to see and accept truth, and then like be really resilient and stubborn about that. There is help out there. It's not like I was just like great at this or whatever. It's because I got a lot of help why I was successful with breastfeeding. A lot of help. And thank you to everyone who has helped me. And so, yeah, that mixed with, again, stubbornness, that's why I've been able to do this.